Congrats on all of the growing Bite success.
Thank you. Thanks. And I hope you had the best time in Australia. That's amazing. I know it was probably a long time ago, but that's so fun. So fun. Are you
Yeah.
happy to be?
Oh yeah. I mean, Australia is a special country for sure.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of you'll see shortly. I mean,
Yeah.
by the time this comes out, the series will be launched. So yeah, it's there's a lot of fun stuff we got into and a lot of important topics, obviously. But yeah, so I'm excited to dive in here. You know, this is kind of an interesting journey that you've had because I feel like those moments when things click, and it was like that your story of, like, I was traveling around with all of these little toothpaste tubes, and then that moment where you're like, why does it have to be this way? And I think the world needs more questions just like that, right? So that we innovate ourselves out of these systems that, obviously, I talk about fatal conveniences all the time, and toothpaste definitely is one of them, not only in the ingredients but also the packaging and stuff, and you've solved both of those two-prong challenges. And so super excited that I've gotten to work with you and tell a bunch of people about what you've done. So yeah, tell the viewers there that, what was that moment and how has that journey been? Because you're definitely kicking some ass.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much. It means a lot. I think it's one of those things where it seems like it's so random, toothpaste, right? Like, my background was not in oral care. I had never thought more, a few, like, toothpaste was not on my radar. And I think that sometimes being an outsider, especially not from the dental industry, not from, the oral care industry, was really helpful in that, because I was able to question why. Because I think when you're, brought up in a lot of these systems, especially when you're integrated in them, if your job's dependent on them, you're not really asking why. You're more asking, like, how do I make this work? How do I do these things? And I think that when you're operating kind of, with new eyes and a new mindset, you're able to really question things. And, I think a lot of the change that we're going to see, and a lot of the change that we need to see, like, as a society, is going to be coming from the outsiders. It's going to be coming from not necessarily the industry experts, but the people who are either using these products every day or using these processes every day. And they're like, wait, this doesn't make sense, And I think a great, kind of an easier way to even break down of how that works is, like, maybe there's a company that's doing something the same way for so long, and then they bring in a new employee and they look at the processes that were put in place, and they were like, this is not the most efficient thing. And they're able to really change, like, create change inside that company. It's the same thing for products. It's the same thing for, these big policies and initiatives. It's going to be the outsiders, I feel like, who are gonna change it.
Yeah, and it's these moments I recognize it in my career several times where you just go, why are people, like, for me it was a supplement industry, and I was like, this is a great ingredient or botanical or compound, but why are all these other things in it, and why is there not an efficacy? And you just going, and then you finally ask yourself enough, and then you look around going, no one's quote unquote doing it correctly. Therein lies the birth of Bite. The interesting thing is, I didn't know this about, I assumed it was just because, you're unique. There's, so everyone listening here, it's not toothpaste in a tube and squeezing it out. It's these little bites, which I've become almost my habit, because I've been using them for so long now. My habit is I enjoy that little kind of crunch. Now it's like, instead of thinking the whole, you're used to, as a kid, squirting this gel blue whatever gel on your toothpaste or on your toothbrush. And now it's like I look for the Bite. And I didn't know this, that I mean, it's called Bite Toothpaste, and you have other products, so we'll get into that. But your acronym is actually because it's the earth, which I
Yeah.
thought was very interesting.
Yeah, thanks. So that's, the bite, the crunch that you're talking about. We worked very hard on that. It was like we had to figure out how do we make this, hard enough to survive shipping, soft enough to be, that you can bite on it, and not something that, these little bits, they're kind of like breath mints, but we actually made them a little softer because we didn't want it to be something that you have to bite really hard down to brush your teeth. And we wanted the powder to kind of fall apart a certain way. And so there was a lot that actually went into the pressure and the ingredients to get that little crunch that we have. And it was, it's kind of, I think when we were kind of talking about like the why and going back to it, and you were talking about with the supplement industry, it is interesting when you're just like, why was toothpaste in gel form? And like, why do we put glycerin in it and propylene glycol? And like, why are we putting artificial flavors
Yeah.
in our toothpaste? And
Fluorides, like we'll get into all. It's
right. And we use
crazy.
monohydroxyapatite, which is this amazing ingredient that, there's a toothpaste in Canada that is approved by the Canadian Dental Association as anti-cavity. It's been used in Japan for the past 40 years. And it's just an amazing ingredient. And it's not even just about the good stuff we have in it. It's also the bad stuff we took out, because like, why did it need to be in there? And I think that when you have a dry format, you end up not having to have all those harsh chemicals, artificial flavors that to then cover up the preservatives, that are in there. And so, I had started Bite as an advocate. I was working in TV. I was traveling all the time for work, but I had been living a lower waste, vegan, plant-based lifestyle. And I was throwing out those little toothpaste tubes, as you had mentioned. And I was like, this doesn't make like this is creating an enormous amount of waste, and then learning about all the ingredients ingredients in there. And so everything we do it's in like the DNA of our company, is because it's the earth. And so although when I started Bite, it was in my living room, like I was like pressing out these tablets, so it was Bite toothpaste bits. As we've grown and expanded new product lines, we wanted something that was inclusive of all of that. We couldn't be Bite toothpaste bits anymore, but when you start in a living room, you don't think about 4 years in the future when you might have this whole product line. So I was actually on a run, and I was thinking like, what am I gonna, what would be the new Bite? Like what am I gonna change the company to be able to encompass all these other product ideas that I have and all these other changes that we can make? And then because it's the earth kind of popped up, and I was like, oh, that's it. So it was retrofitted, but I feel like it was
Right,
very serendipitous.
right. Well, and it is, and we are that, and earth is us, and we are that. And I have these conversations all the time. When you divorce any part of your own nature, i.e. toxify yourself with chemicals and unnecessary things, especially when you're talking about putting something in your mouth, right? It's like, what the hell, right? Why would any of this be even possible? Which I scratch my head literally on a daily basis as I dive into all these things and research all these things. But when you divorce that, right? When you go, it's just the way it is, and we just have to do it. And so these chemicals are just a part of it. I'm just going to take that this fluoride is good for me. I'm just going to take that this preservative is good for me, this propylene glycol, this flow agent, all of this stuff. And then this tube, I'm just gonna, that's just what it is. And then we just as society, we just keep adopting these systems, and you have to actually adopt them over and over and over again because you pay for them, right? You keep saying yes, and we just accept these things, when it's like, why would we want to accept something that's harming us and our children? And then, to that first point, if you've also harmed yourself in the process, because the packaging is bad and the toxicology that you're getting exposed to is bad, well, that inherently has to pollute the earth. Has to. There is no separation ever. right? And that's why I love you very much integrated. I mean, this is absolutely a disrupting thing, because people, I can't imagine people just going, wait a minute, I brush my teeth with a tablet.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what? And it only takes like 2, 3 bites, and then you've got the performance anyway. So it really doesn't matter. And then, by God, it's so great to travel with. You know what I mean? It's so great. And then you've got the containers. I mean, I don't want to make this seem like an infomercial, because it's not. The most important thing for me is these 2 pillars that you've tackled in an industry, and that is the waste, right? So the recyclable pouches and the glass containers and the elimination of the plastic, but then also a clean alternative to toothpaste. And talk to me about, you know, since you've created it, and then the trajectory of, are people waking up to understanding this more and more, and wanting to get, wanting to change these habits?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I would say, resoundingly, yes, people are waking up to it. And what's really interesting, but there's still so much more work to do, right? There are more sulfate-free shampoos than there are sulfate-free toothpaste. And it's like, wait, so we understand that we shouldn't be using sulfate in our hair, but then we're going to brush our teeth with it and put it in our bodies. And so when the American Dental Association did a study, we swallow 5% of our toothpaste every time we brush our teeth, which is an entire blob every 7 days. So if you're not going to eat it, you shouldn't be using it. And I think that more people are waking up to this. One of my favorite reviews that we get from people, because we're asking, marketing 101 is like, you don't ask people to change behaviors. And when you have a company like mine, where it's a toothpaste tablet, that's like literally what we're asking them to do, and that's a really hard thing it's a big ask. And so, one of the best favorite reviews that we get is like, it was really weird at first, but now I'm obsessed, or now I could never go back. And the thing is that, like, yeah, sure, we've all been using toothpaste since we were, 3 or 4 years old. We use it every day, twice a day. And so all of a sudden, like, putting a tablet in our mouth, you might eat it the first few times. Like it's like a mint, be like, wait, this is what I'm supposed to do. But then it's a way cleaner experience, both from an ingredient standpoint, but also just from a taste and a feel standpoint. It's not sticky, it's not gooey. And it also, the convenience of travel, because that was one of the things every time, I kind of talk to people about it, that they're just like, oh my gosh, not having to keep, they have like 4 different little toothpaste tubes in their travel kit, because they're like, I don't know how much I have left in each one. So, it's like you take these things, and it's just like, why was it done this way? And how can we do it better? And that's the essence of Bite, from just our toothpaste tablets, but then we ended up we have mouthwash tablets, we have deodorant, and everything kind of starts with why was it being done the way that it is now, which is the cheapest. I mean, I'll tell you why. Actually, it's the cheapest ingredients they possibly can find. It's a race to the bottom. It's convenience at the earth's and our health's expense, to get the cheapest product out there with the highest margin that companies can make a profit from. And for us, it's like, no, there are people out there who want the best. They care about the planet. They care about their bodies. They realize that we're interconnected, and they're willing to support a business like mine, and we started Bite with $6,000 in savings in my living room. Like, I talk about how we're customer funded. We would never be here if it wasn't for our customers. We don't have investors. I'm not beholden to any investors, which I think is amazing. Don't have to show growth or, whatever. I can just really run the company the way I want to. And that's it's because people support us, and they tell their friends about us, and then amazing people like you talk about us, and I think that it's been really, really amazing to kind of see the conversation around clean ingredients and sustainable living, as well as kind of people getting more involved and very vocal about it, kind of all coinciding. It's been really amazing.
Yeah, I even saw my boy Jason Momoa giving you guys some love a few months ago. That was great. I was like, oh yeah, Jason's on it. He's biting down. That's great. Yeah. So it's like that kind of, well, when you realize all of these things, that astonishing I want to unpack for people too a little bit of the what's not in there.
Mm.
Um, but also this kind of astonishing stat where, what is it? 1 billion approximately toothpaste tubes every year, right? Are just sitting in the landfill. And then you add on top of it, I like to look at complexity of these things, because you're like, we definitely know, and it's coming out more and more and more, wrapping your food in plastic, which is, i.e. petroleum, is a really bad idea, right? And then wearing, this thing that just came out last week, sports bras with elastane, and that's petroleum, and that's linked to cancer. It's like all this stuff is out there. So now, if you think about it, very intimate thing, and certainly very susceptible transdermally in your mouth, and now you have the plastics and the petroleum holding your toothpaste, which inherently already has, which we'll get into, infinitely more toxins, but you just add on top, the packaging itself is contributing to more of the toxic load, and it just becomes this nightmare that we all have kind of become apathetic to, until someone kind of raises the alarm and goes, hey, this isn't good. Well, why the hell is it in the marketplace? Why are my children, swallow? And by the way, children swallow it infinitely more than even adults, right? That 5% goes up with children, because it tastes good, and they probably mostly want to swallow it. So it's just so I guess the need is, when you look at some of these things, you realize how gnarly they are, right? They realize the complexity of all of this stuff. And you know it sounds like you looked at it from a packaging perspective first, and then you kind of like, what has that been like for you about discovering these weird chemicalized fluorides that are not the same that are in nature, these other preservatives? And what was that like? Because you started with like, I got to clean up this packaging, right? And then you get into all these ingredients.
Yeah, it was definitely, honestly, it was shocking, because when I went into it, it was the toothpaste tubes, right? The 1 billion, and I love things that are visual. So I was like, how much is that? What does that actually look like? That is the equivalent of 50 Empire State Buildings worth of plastic in our landfills every year, right? That is a massive, massive load of plastic that's ending up in for totally unnecessary, right? We do not
And
need
unrecyclable
tubes.
too. Yeah.
Unrecyclable, exactly.
Yeah.
And even the ones, they're coming out with recyclable tubes. You have to actually cut it open. You have to clean it out. 9% of
No,
plastic is only recycled
doesn't
anyway.
work.
No
Doesn't
sense,
work.
right? And so
Yeah,
it's like,
doesn't
just
work.
put it in a tablet. It makes so much more sense. Like, why are we keep
Yeah.
on trying to avoid the tablet here? But then it was kind of learning about, because when I wanted to redo the packaging, right? So, okay, it's not going to be in a tube. I want it to be a dry powder or a tablet. Then it was like, what is toothpaste? That was the next question. If I want to redo the packaging, I have to figure out what it is, because if I'm going to make it, I need to know how to make it. And that's when I started looking into what toothpaste actually needs to be. It needs to be an abrasive. You most likely want, which is to, helps get the plaque off your teeth. You most likely want a flavorant, right? To make it taste good. Most people, this is, totally up to user. We chose to put a foaming agent in there. We use a coconut-based surfactant, which is a foaming agent, because people, they like how it is, and we need to be able to have people actually use it. And then we put in zinc citrate, right? Zinc citrate, it bonds to malodors and bad breath. It helps break down your bad breath. So when you look at what needs to be in toothpaste, and then something like a nanohydroxyapatite, right? Which is actually rebuilding your teeth from the inside out, or, a calcium carbonate, whatever you want to use, that's what it needs to be. So then you look in, well, why is there propylene glycol? Why is there, well, that's a stabilizer. Why is there sodium lauryl sulfate? Oh, that's the cheapest surfactant, because the one that we're using as a foaming agent is like, and I'm not exaggerating, it's almost like 400 times the price. Right. So then it's like, and when you get down to it, it's still, that's because sodium lauryl sulfate is so incredibly cheap, and so when you look at the choices that were being made, when I started looking at the actual formulas of what's in toothpaste and what needs to be there. And that's when I realized I'm out of my depth. I need to learn. So I started taking online chemistry classes. I started talking to dentists and dental hygienists to get an understanding of what is this. And then I was pointed to these articles back in 2014 that toothpaste actually used to purposely contain microplastics. So I don't know if you guys remember, but there was this time where toothpaste, you'd look at like that blue glob and there would be a bunch of dots in it. That was plastic. And it was a dental hygienist who actually raised the alarm because she kept on seeing these little blue balls caught in her patient's gums. And she's like, this is going to cause major problems. This can cause gum disease, this can cause bacterial, like this is a problem. She had raised the flag over and over again. You can see this all online, and everybody, both the FDA and the companies that were putting this in their product were like, no, it's fine. It's, it's fine with the FDA. It's fine with us. And it wasn't until 2016 or 17 that the FDA actually changed it. And they said, no more. And it was like, how in the world were we actually allowed, like, was it allowed for these little tiny bits of plastic to be put in our toothpaste? So that's when I started realizing common sense needs to be applied to some of these things. And just because you can look at also toothpaste used to contain triclosan, right? Triclosan is an antibacterial. It gets in our waterways. It's environmentally destructive. It's not something we should put in our bodies. And they were putting it in toothpaste. Why? And so these are the types of things that when that happened, it was like, we need a reboot of what this is. And it needs to, taste good, be effective. One of the things that for Bite is I want it to be beautiful, right? I don't feel like people should have to make a compromise when they make the right choice, right? So it's like, you want to use our product, it's eco-friendly, it's sustainable. I also want it to be beautiful. So it came in this glass jar with an aluminum lid, but I wanted to make sure every ingredient in there was very purposeful, research-backed, and, totally different from what was currently, what is still currently available.
Yeah, I actually had no idea about the microplastics that they literally put in there. I mean, we already are, I think, in a massive problem with that, obviously, because it's chelating in so many of our products, period. And then that one, talk about visual, that one stat, it's not really a stat, but an understanding of how much we're actually being exposed to plastics and swallowing a credit card worth every week. And then you add on top of it all the chemicals and binders and endocrine disruptors and forever chemicals and all of that stuff that are attached to that plastic. And then to find out that they purposely were putting little mini plastic pellets as some sort of superior abrasive or something. It's like, what in the hell? How is that? I mean, how is that possible? And listen, I'm not even surprised, because I've read so much on certain studies that the FDA is just allowed to happen. And then at the same time, they feel good about themselves because they write an article about the toxicology of certain things and then don't do anything about it from a regulatory perspective. And it's like, wow, okay, so we don't have a regulatory body. We don't have, and they throw out products on the market, and then if it causes problem, then they'll do something about it, right? And so this is a classic example of all of that stuff. Like, yeah, let's just put plastic in there, and then you have the fluoride thing. The fact that they're still convincing people to put fluoride in water and it's good for your teeth. And when it's clear, there's tons of meta-analysis and thousands of articles and developmentally and neurotoxicology reports and children and lower IQ scores, and that is unbelievable to me. And again, you're opening your mouth up and exposing yourself to whatever is okay to buy. What are your thoughts? Because I have many on this, what are your thoughts on when you're seeing something blatantly, that they know? It's not like it's not like these big companies can just sit there and like, oh, really? I just a cheap ingredient. I just wanted to use propylene glycol as my agent of choice. What are your thoughts on it?
When they know that they know, it's, yeah, it's remarkable the amount of like being able to put head in the sand, right? And I think that you see this with especially the bigger companies where they are incredibly incentivized to keep things the way that they are. And they have, because when you think about the backing of these companies and they move at glacial pace. So when they need to make a change, they do not want to make a change. And so when it's being like, how do we, we don't want to even look at this evidence of what this is, because that would then, we would have to then even consider changing. So I think, it's definitely like perverse incentives here, right? Like why would they don't want to make, and so what they do is double down on what they're already doing. And they have marketing budgets that are out of like that are insane, and when you look at, okay, so I think what's really interesting that we can kind of, I would love to get your thoughts on this, is like nanohydroxyapatite and fluoride, right? So like, here's my thoughts on nanohydroxyapatite and the fact that it's not ADA approved in the US and it's not approved anti-cavity by the FDA. And here's where I think I learned about a huge breakdown in our system is nanohydroxyapatite has been used in oral care in Japan for over 40 years. It's proven effective, it's proven safe. It works as anti-cavity, right? In studies. However, because it's been around for so long, it is not patentable. And so a company in the US is not incentivized to get nanohydroxyapatite approved as anti-cavity in the US, because they'll pay for all of the drug testing to get it approved by the FDA. And then as soon as they do that, anybody can use it because it's not patentable. So when you look at a lot of these pharma companies that are patenting all these different ways of doing things, you can even see, different ways of using fluoride or different whatever. The reason they are is because they can patent that process. They can patent the ingredient. Or the way the ingredient's being used. There's incentivized for them because then they lock it. They're the only ones to be able to use that. But when you have a nanohydroxyapatite, you can't patent it. And so like for use in toothpaste, so then there's no incentive for anyone to pay to get this across the regulatory lines. And I think that is one of the main reasons, honestly, why you don't see these more holistic or alternative ways that are effective. Because if the big guys or even the small guys can't protect their investment, right? Then why would they do it? And I can kind of like, if to humanize it, to explain like why I wouldn't do it as a business. I'm a small business, right? So I would have to pay however much it is to get nanohydroxyapatite approved for the FDA, all of the studies, like I'd have to have an internal team, the whole thing to get it through. And then as soon as I put that all through, as soon as we put it on the market, anti-cavity with nanohydroxyapatite, because we passed it, which by the way, could take 5 to 10, it could take an enormous amount of time. Anybody around me could just do the same thing. And then they can offer their toothpaste way cheaper than me because they didn't have all the study costs. And so I was talking about perverse incentives. Now it's like people are just going to only push through stuff that they can patent. And I think that I really do think that that's why, at least my experience watching nanohydroxyapatite and seeing the challenges it's had in the US, I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, well, and then the natural ingredients by nature are less and less, or if they're, obviously you have processes of like taking curcumin out of turmeric, for example. Curcumin's still a natural compound. So in this case, you also can't patent nature, right? Which is inherently the opposite of all of these companies, because they're incentivized. If you eliminate BPA in the inside of cans, okay, then they make BPH, and then they make BPF, and then and then no one knows about that, and they just do it. And so if you don't have a test for that which they just altered, then it's quote unquote not there, right? So it's just this world is so bloody interesting, and which is why I love this stuff. I wish you and I wouldn't need to talk about it. I wish that people would have the best interest of humans in the front of their profits, but in every turn, it doesn't seem that way, right? Which is why I love to align with and support companies like yourself that are doing something that should be the modus operandi. It should be the way we all are doing it. Why would anyone knowingly make a product that even potentially could hurt somebody, right? And that's the just the astonishing kind of shock that I find from, all of these quote unquote personal everyday items, that it takes a disruptor like yourself to just go, hey man, and you're only, I use that lightly, you're only doing what's right, right? And it's like,
Well, and it
why
should
is
be the bare minimum, like
yeah,
doing what's right should be the bare minimum. Why is it the exception? Why is
yes,
it exceptional to do what's right?
yeah,
I don't know.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, man, we've worked really hard to mess up a lot of things, right? In the environment. Personally, like, the Mayo Clinic put out a study, 2.7% of all Americans are actually healthy. Only 2.7% based on what they're eating, based on lifestyle, you know, how they're living. 2.7. So we are this nation, and we are just rapidly almost trying to hurt we're, if you look at, like, if you just look at it from non-emotionally, and if some alien came down and just looked, going, you guys look like you're trying to kill yourselves as a population, because you have no people that are healthy, right? It's like, I mean, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but the importance of things that you are doing about a safe product that you're using as a toothpaste, and it's also the packaging and everything else is not hurting the downstream effect, is that we are, that is inherently what we should all be sparked as a human just to do. And somewhere along the way, we become apathetic to this common sense kind of space in us to go, why did we stop questioning? And on the one hand, you can't believe, it's hard to believe that you look at these ingredients in normal products and go, that's harmful to my child, right? It's hard to believe that. And
And it's
yet, yeah,
well, and that the thing about it too, when I think about this is just kind of like a really simple visual, is that kids' toothpaste is the most fluorescent, like
right,
radioactive looking thing.
yeah,
It's like they made it even more ridiculous. Like it comes in like this really big, hard plastic pump, and it's like bright pink or bright blue, and there's some character on it. And it's like, artificial strawberry flavored. It's the last thing that they should be putting in their mouth,
yeah,
and I think that it's the one, when kind of hearing the fact that the 2.7, it's shocking and sad. And there's one side of me says, well, at least there's a lot we can improve on, right? There's a lot
yeah.
that you can
A
really
lot of
choose
opportunity.
anything in your life and be like, where's the small win here to make the change? And I think that's something that we, talk a lot about at Bite. And it's toothpaste. You use it in the morning and at night. And it can be that trigger of being like, I'm making a healthy choice. I wake up in the morning and the first thing I do is brush my teeth. And I've made a choice that's better for my body. It's better for the planet. I see it every day on my vanity. Like this is my way to start the day. And, it's really hard. And I think people, it's really hard to make big change, and it's really hard to make big lasting change. But it's when you can break down these things into small little wins throughout the day, and small things that you can, almost set it and forget it, that's how you're able to start making those lifestyle changes that can actually be sustainable, not just for the planet, but actually for your lifestyle, and I think that that's something that we've put a lot of thought into it. And how do we, slowly and permanently have these changes, because that's what we actually need. We need a lot of people making these small but forever changes to kind of add up to start creating this new world and creating new bodies for ourselves,
100%. I can't agree more. And it is those small, we never got here by a light switch, right? It never was just a choice and all of a sudden we're here. It's the billions and billions of choices that have got us to evolve from wherever we came from to develop these conveniences, for sure. And then over time in corporations, it's like, we're here now. Okay. So I agree. Like, and there's nothing, I think there's nothing more powerful than making small choices that align more with who you are, what you are, and the integration of you, and that supportive of your life, right? Because when okay, let's start with toothpaste, and at a certain point you'll forget about it, and now your new habit is just ingrained, and you're not thinking about it. Like, okay, let's try deodorant, let's do something different, let's try different clothing, let's keep, instead of like putting our own head in the sand and
Mhm.
expecting our life to be great, when we're surrounded by infertility chemicals and endocrine disruptors and phthalates and forever chemicals, and so we're surrounded by things that are definitely not they're not supportive of our life, right? So they
And are
will.
a lot of times. Yeah.
Exactly. So talk to me about the because listen, you're going into this whole personal care uh world is so big, and it's so, I'm going to say it, polluted, both in the containers, but also just utterly scary what is in, from obviously deodorants, and deodorants been heavy metals, been linked to breast cancer, and it's just and you think lymphatic, you're like, it's just again, the skin is an organ. So yeah, so where are you going, what are you doing, and what do you want to have happen with the rest of your kind of journey here?
So for the deodorant, it was actually really similar to coming up with our toothpaste. It was asking why. I had been using deodorant that was coming in a paper tube, the cardboard tube, and I was using it every morning, and it slides back in. You have to stick your finger up there and try to get it to stay up. And then it gets the lip of it gets really disgusting. And there's a lot of bacteria in there. And I was just like, why is this the best option for, low waste, zero waste deodorant with clean ingredients? And I was just like someone needs to do something about this. Like, this is a terrible experience. And I was like, oh, right. Like, I have a personal care company. At that time, it was an oral care company. I was like, I have a company. I can do this, and that was the beginning of being like, all right, if Bite made deodorant, which, spoiler alert, we ended up doing, what would it look like? And I was like, okay, I'd want to be able to get like 2 fingers up there, because, it sucks having this one finger, and I want a friction fit so it doesn't fall back into the into the cardboard. And I don't want the cardboard to touch my, skin. So we had the case come up, above that. And it was, and then I don't want to have palm oil. So we needed to make a palm oil free base. And I didn't want baking soda, because a lot of people have reactions to baking soda. And so it was, kind of asking the same question in a different format when we came up with the deodorant. And, that's kind of what we continue to do, is just look at the things, I'm living this lifestyle. I live a low waste, clean lifestyle. I'm using these products every day. And I just asked myself, why is this the best way to do it? And if Bite did it and we made it better, what would we do? And so, we've continued to invest in innovation. We've continued to come out with new products. I like talk to our customers every Friday. I think they're the most amazing people in the world. So I hop on the phone with them and I call a few every single week, and I talk to them and I say, what's going on in your life and what do you like and how do you know about Bite and how can I make your zero waste clean journey better? What products are you using that still suck? And that really helps me when I'm not able to, some of the things are in my life that are bothering me, like deodorant, but other things, kind of getting this more holistic view of it. So, I mean, that's where we're at. It's kind of like doing it bigger, doing it better, continuing to respond to our community and really question anything in our everyday routines that's not really in benefit to our bodies and the planet.
Mhm. Yeah, and again, I think of deodorant literally as important as opening my mouth and putting something in it. And it's like the transdermal effect in that is and right next to the lymphatic system, and then again the startling aspect of like how much pollution, because all of these are these hard plastic things. There's no way that they're recycling any of that. Recycling, again, doesn't exist. So if anyone thinks it really exists, it actually pretty much doesn't. We failed at that. So these things just get, and that now you got partial toxic stuff going into the environment as well. But that, like, what was it, like 14-15 million pounds of deodorant packaging? Like, what the hell, man?
Why? Well, and
Yeah.
that's the thing too, when people see our deodorant, they're like, wait, that's like really small. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's half the size of the plastic thing you're using because we don't have a screw in the bottom. It's almost the exact same amount of formula. It's just that when you're buying that plastic deodorant at the drugstore, half of it, and like, don't trust me, like do it yourself, like go, screw it up. Half of it is a screw. It's a plastic screw. And so you're looking at it and it's attached to an elevator and it pushes up the formula. So, that's one of the things that I looked at it and I was like, why in the world is this done this way? Like why? And so we did end up with something that's about half the size, but it's almost the exact same amount of formula. And so, I think that those are the types of things where and the thing about it is like, this is just incredibly unnecessary packaging. Like when you look at, there are some plastic that we're going to have a really hard time getting rid of, like medical waste plastic, like those, but it's like this personal care plastic, this is a no-brainer for us to get out of our routines, And so for me, it was like, what do we do and how do we do it? And so it was custom componentry, it's a 3-piece case that you put the cardboard refill inside, then you put the bottom on, you put the top on, and it's talk about travel friendly, super compact. And it, again, like in alignment with Bite values, we wanted something that was beautiful. But it really, really, really is just practical, and we did clinical testings on it, which is with volunteer humans that you pay. And, we did hyperallergenic to make sure that there's no skin irritation, because that's one of the biggest complaints with natural deodorants, and efficacy, and so we've tested that. It works. We actually use we use zinc riciliate in our deodorant, which is very similar to the zinc citrate that we use in our toothpaste and mouthwash, which bonds to malodors. So the zinc compound in there is bonding to the malodor in BO, as I'm like pointing to my armpits while we're chatting. But it bonds to that, breaks the bond. So you still sweat, but you don't stink. And that's what was really important. And then also we wanted to make sure that all of the fragrance that we use, the scents, we have 100% transparency, but we list every single, we have unscented as well, but we list every single thing that's in there, because we want, this hiding behind the word fragrance is just not cool. But I also understand that people want to have fragrance. Like, we do have unscented for anybody who wants that, but people, we asked our customers and they did want that. So we're like, okay, but if we're going to do it, it's going to be the best, we're going to make the best choice that we can. And we're going to be incredibly transparent by what choices we made and why.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing. I mean the loopholes of fragrance, even natural fragrance. There's so much that is allowed in, and this weird, which again, who created these trade secrets of fragrances so they don't have to list what the hell is going on. It just reeks with profits over people. That's all it does. And again, I just don't understand that. I hope that people not only question and look at their toothpaste tubes and their ingredients, but also their deodorants and everything.
Yeah.
Every cosmetic, every lip liner, mascara, makeup, like this is the kind of conversation that we have to start having, and then point people to solutions, because like I said, the stats are super clear. Like we are sprinting towards our own demise, and that's not without some acute issues, right? And so a lot of these chemicals are neurologically affecting us right now, right? And they're affecting our bodies, and they're stressing our bodies out, and they're interacting with our immune systems and increasing reactive oxygen species. Like there's real things going on. And then it's real things floating in the ocean and the rivers and the streams, and neutering also the reptiles, the birds, the thing. So again, like, and this is where I love to have grounded conversations, pun intended, with the environment, because I don't like, I'm just going to go off on a tangent for a second, but I don't like the conversations of climate change when it's so distant. It's like it's here. It's what deodorant you have on, it's what toothpaste you're using, and what packaging that has, because those things are either petroleum based or industrialized fluorides or whatever. So that's linked already to destruction. And again, I said this earlier, if it's destructing that, it's destructing you. So there's no separation. So that's why we have to get out of these chemicals. We have to get out of these things, because they're hurting you, they're hurting your children today, now, and they're hurting the environment. And that's how we link these conversations, that as within, so without. That's so we can do this if we just educate ourselves out of the apathy of our over industrialized conveniences. And so celebrating what you have done and the questions that you asked, and then the most important thing you did is you took action on it, and created a company and a business, because that's no joke. Like it's no joke to formulate, to get through the regulatory, understand everything, laws and regulations and companies and investment and employees and distribution and shipping. It's freaking hard to create a business. I totally get it. And then in the face of using basically ingredients that are infinitely more expensive, because they're not the toxic, crap that are super cheap.
And that's what we say too. Like if clean ingredients and sustainability and sustainable choices were as cheap as what's on the market, then that's what would be the baseline. So when people talk about like, why is everything that's cleaner more expensive? And why is everything that's more sustainable more expensive? You're like, well, because if it was cheap, that would be like, that's what people would use. The whole thing is that, and as more and more companies use it, we'll be able to bring down the price for everyone and make it more standard. But until that happens, it is more expensive, and that's just like the way that like the whole reason that we're in this whole problem to begin with was that it's a race to the bottom, right? For pricing for the big guys, right? So that's why they're using the cheapest packaging material, the cheapest, ingredients. And I love how you talked about how the ocean is the same. Like when we're talking about that credit card worth of plastic that we're all consuming every week, it's the same plastic that's in our ocean. When we're talking about ocean plastic and we're talking about that, it's not separate from us. It's in the systems that we are all very dependent on this, planet that's Earth. And I think that it's really, really easy and very convenient to forget that we are so interconnected, and it's not hippie talk. It's actual, our water comes from these water systems. This plastic is in our water system. This is what's happening. It's in our animals, and we're eating the fish that have the plastic, and then the plastic is going in our bodies. It's not some, kind of outside of us thing. It's our everyday life and our reality, for sure.
100%. Yeah. And I like how I just celebrate that you've created this company and these options for people that can then, maybe give up the Starbucks so that you can spend a little more money on integration. I believe this to my core. When you integrate things that are healthier and better for you, it begets more energy, and you can define that however you want, but it provides you something that's sometimes not even tangible, right? When you wake up in the day and you intend your day and you set intentions, and then when you have products that you line up going, this is healthy for me, this is better for me, and this is connected to a bigger reason as to why I'm doing it. Now I believe it unlocks more and more of that human spirit and more of that potential, and that potential in the world is needed more than ever. So we don't need more people just going to sleep and buying whatever and being knowingly toxified. We don't need that. We need the opposite.
Intention and alignment. And yeah, absolutely.
100%. Well, Lindsay, it's been an awesome conversation. And again, thank you for creating what you've created. And I've thoroughly enjoyed using the products, and I use them on a freaking daily basis. And I have ever since I started my first crunch. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you're doing, and keep going, keep creating.
Thank you so much, Darren. Thanks for having me.